It's been nearly 2 weeks since the Switch 2 launched, and I've already logged quite a lot of time on the system. Clicked on this, you probably are wondering, is the Switch 2 actually worth it? And my simple, honest answer is maybe. Can't really give a definitive answer, but I can explain if it's worth it for you based on personal preferences, so I'm going to break that down in this video. So first, let's talk about the system itself. So I never got a Switch OLED, I always use the regular launch model, and comparing the original Switch to the Switch 2 is like a night and day difference. The screen is crisper, much bigger, and the Joy-Cons feel way more ergonomic. It's not groundbreaking, but it's a solid, significant upgrade. The dock also has a sleeker design and finally a built-in Ethernet port. You might remember the original did not have that. Nintendo sold an external adapter separately, which was pretty ridiculous. So I'm glad they fixed that this time around. And as for the new mouse functionality, I mean, it's cool, but honestly, I've barely touched it in all the time I've played. I'm sure Nintendo has some games coming up that will use it more, but so far outside of the Welcome Tour, which I haven't even tried, and probably many of you haven't played either, it just hasn't seen much use. It kind of feels like every Nintendo console launches with some new tech they hype up, only for it to barely matter later on. The Switch had that IR sensor on the right Joy-Con used in like one game. I remember using it in 1-2 Switch, I think, and it's not even the new model. Like, the 3DS had AR functionality and they used that for one minigame, and now this mouse feature might have the same fate. But what about other updates? Besides more power, which is pretty obvious, and I'll talk about that a little more in a bit, the UI is almost identical to the original Switch. Honestly, it feels like it could have just been a firmware update. I was never a big fan of the minimal Switch UI, so I was hoping for something fresh like the 3DS where you could have different backgrounds and even badges from Nintendo Badge Arcade. And that's actually something I'm going to cover in another video, so subscribe for that, but this is all just a nitpick. The addition of GameCube games is huge though, since there's been no official way to play them on new hardware since the Wii's backward compatibility, and that was only the original Wii. Later versions of the Wii did not have that. But the only problem with that is we only have 3 games right now, and for me, there's just not really anything I'm that interested in. Wind Waker is there, and it's actually one of my favorite Zelda games, but I have Wind Waker HD, which I think is the definitive version of this game. I'm sure we'll eventually see fan favorites like Sunshine, Luigi's Mansion, TDYD, Melee, and other fan favorites, but for now, the library is just pretty bare. There's also a new party feature with the C button, plus gameplay streaming and video calls, and after 2 weeks, I mean, it's alright. I've used it like one time. Like, most of us are never going to use the video parties. The Wii U actually did have video calls too, but let me know if you remember that. That was a pretty obscure feature. And speaking of the Wii U, while that console flopped, it had lots of different apps pre-installed. Remember Miiverse, Nintendo TV, which another obscure one, Miiverse, Nintendo TV, which another obscure app, Playlog, and of course the Mii channels. But the Switch 2, it's just strictly games. Honestly, I kind of miss some of that old Wii U charm, and also the charm on the Wii with just all the different channels. Miiverse was a fun little community that tied into some games in really creative ways. Remember the messages in Wind Waker HD or Mario Maker? I would have loved to see something like that brought back, just to have more of a community aspect. And yeah, the Switch 2 still feels pretty weak on online features. There's just no messaging, no trophies. Parties are still pretty clunky, and they still feel way behind consoles that came out over a decade ago. Switch 2 is still using friend codes, which is just mind-boggling to me. Remember, the Wii U had usernames. It was easy to add people, and now, since the Switch, Nintendo has went back to friend codes. But I just don't know why they have this. And the limited apps, it's just not great. Alright, so that's the system, but what about the games? Because let's be honest, the games are what matter most. No one's gonna buy a console that has no games. I really love Mario Kart World, and having it bundled with the Switch 2 for basically $50, I think that's a great deal. But if you don't get it bundled, you have to pay $80, and yeah, that price is just not okay. It's a fantastic, well-made game, and I've been playing it constantly these past 2 weeks, but at the end of the day, it's just a racing game. There's a few modes, it's super fun, but come on, this is not an $80 game. But with the bundle, absolutely worth it. But besides World, there just really isn't much new right now. I mean, there's some upgraded games, but they're also $80 if you don't own the originals, which might actually be worse than World's price. Now, there are a few third-party games like Cyberpunk and Hogwarts Legacy, but let's be real, most people who want to play those are probably on PS5, Series X or S, or PC. The run will look way better there anyway, and really the appeal here is if you travel or commute a lot. The portability of the Switch 2 is still a huge selling point, but for me personally, I work remotely, so that feature just really isn't a big deal for me. If I wanted to play something like Cyberpunk, I'd just get it on my PC or PS5. Mario Kart World is literally the only new game I've played on this thing so far, and yeah, games do run better on Switch 2, but it's just not some game-changing leap. So is the Switch 2 worth it for you? Like I said, it heavily depends on your situation. If you're a die-hard Nintendo fan and have the money, it's probably an easy buy. The price isn't going to drop anytime soon, so unless you want to wait, it may be worth grabbing now. The library will grow fast. Donkey Kong Bonanza comes out next month, and after that direct we just saw, I'm really hyped for this game. But if you're not a big Nintendo fan, it just honestly probably isn't worth it, even if you do like Nintendo. If you are looking for portable games without being locked to Nintendo, you probably have a Steam Deck already, but if you don't, I would recommend that. And if you are a Nintendo fan but $500, $400 is a steep price for you and you may struggle to afford that, I would honestly just wait. $450 to $500 is just not cheap, and right now there's no must-play killer app besides Mario Kart World. Save your money for later just because there's just not much on the system yet, especially if you have an original Switch. That's probably mostly what you would be playing on the Switch 2 besides Mario Kart. The original Switch had a lot of appeal to even non-Nintendo fans, with it being the pioneer of hybrid gaming and being a lot more budget friendly. At the time, in 2017, there really weren't any serious hybrids on the market, unlike today where Steam, Sony, and Microsoft have gotten involved. So people who may commuter travel often who got an original Switch could look to other options now. But anyway, those are just my thoughts on the Switch 2. Feel free to disagree with me. I want to hear your opinions in the comments, and be sure to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.